what should I do? And he says, Josie, take a piece of paper and make a list and put the pros and the cons and draw a line in the middle, and then write down all the pros of the one job, and then write down all the pros of the cons of that job, and then do the same thing with the other one. All the pros of the good job that you've been offered, and all the cons. And then take those two pieces of paper, throw them away, and do what your heart wants you to do.
Welcome to Motivational Mondays, conversations with David Ibarra, and today I'm delighted to have as my guest, Josie Valdez. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, I wanted to talk and start by saying, boy, you look nice today.
I do look nice today.
Now, I had to get that on camera because that's what I said when I first seen you, and your response was just so Josie. So, at any rate, I wanted to begin by talking. I think I've known you 45 years. It goes way back for sure. And when I first met you, you were working in a leadership role with a small business association or administration. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, I spent about 20 years or so with the SBA, Small Business Administration, and I was the first woman manager hired in that bureaucracy. I was the first Latina in management, and it was a pleasure working for them, and it was a great place for me to spread my wings and show my talents.
Well, you've got a lot of talent, that's for sure, and those wings are pretty wide. I'll tell you what, you've been a trailblazer in a lot of things that you've done, particularly since you mentioned first as a woman leader in the Small Business Administration and a Latina. What other things have you advocated along that area?
Well, you know, I've always believed that all you need to do is be prepared and have the wherewithal to move forward, and you will move forward. So I went into the SBA wanting to make a change for the people that the SBA serves and not have it be a bureaucracy, but have it to be a response to the people. Mm-hmm. So I went in and made it happen.
Tell me a little bit about what is the purpose of the Small Business Administration? What is it that they do? What kind of doors do they open for the people that they serve?
The Small Business Administration is a bureaucracy. It's an organization that has been organized to help small businesses grow. Now, that's what they said when I went in and explored what it was and did I really want to work there. But I found that they weren't really being responsive to the audience they were supposed to be serving, and it's a bureaucracy, so I wanted to find a way to make them meet their real mission.
Mm-hmm. And their real mission was?
Their real mission is to make loans to small businesses, to train small businesses, to encourage small businesses to grow, and to focus on some of the arenas that weren't being adequately served. Women business owners, minority business owners, veterans business owners, young entrepreneurs. And that's where I really loved working in those arenas to make things happen.
Well, you know, I've got a little history with the Small Business Administration. Early on, I met a Randy Horahuchi who told me, David, you need to buy your own building. And I believe we were at a lounge somewhere having a drink, and he just wouldn't let go. And I said, well, Randy, I just really don't have the money. I don't know if I could even get the loan. And he says, I'll get you the loan. And he was with a lending institution, and I said, okay, I think I'll do that. And I went and filled out all the paperwork. I got the partner of Zions Bank and got a loan to buy this very building that we're in. At the time that I got the loan, Josie, the Zions Bank came to me and said, David, you don't need a small business administration loan. You qualify a loan. So are you sure? Because you're going to have to pay a little extra. And I said, hell yes, I'm sure. I don't want Randy Horahuchi, who talked me into it, to not get what he deserves to get for working on this loan. So that's how I got in. I ended up, just believed I couldn't qualify. So many of us are stuffed with the limitations of our beginnings. We don't realize the opportunities in front of us. And that's what I remember about you, because I've talked to you about that with other small business owners that I served. And you're always, yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Well, you know what I did was I took the programs that the SBA had, and then I went out in the community to talk to people about them. Mm-hmm. You can qualify. This is how you do it. These are the step-by-steps. Then I went to the bankers, and I talked to them. I'm preparing the people for the loans. Now, you need to be open to the programs. And so then talking to the lender and then talking to the small business people, we began to increase the number of loans that were going out to the small business community. And they were taking advantage of the other programs, such as the building loans for purchasing buildings. And things began to grow and things began to change. And people would always say, well, we can't do that. And I go, where does it say that we can't? It doesn't say that we can't. So if it doesn't say that we can't, we can.
Well, Josie, where is your roots? Where did your family come from?
I come from migrant braceros who crossed the border from Mexico and went into the United States. My mom used to joke about it, and she would say, "We're not wetbacks, mija. We're Rio Grande surfers." So it was her outlook on life that transferred to me. I grew up in Houston, and my grandparents, when they crossed the border, were picking cotton and picking sugar cane in Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas. I was born in Arkansas on a little farm. My grandfather learned to speak English, and he had natural leadership qualities, and he became the leader of the planters and the pickers and the farmers, and they would come to him, and he would weigh their cotton bales, and he would pay them. And so he had natural leadership qualities, which I think I inherited many of. But my mom became a widow at 25 years old with 5 children.
Wow.
So we grew up on welfare. We grew up on the bologna and the cheese and the peanut butter and the flour. But my mom always had a motto also that she would say over and over and over as I was growing up, and that was, "Si tú quieres, mija, tú puedes." If you wish, if you want, you can. Right. So she was very instrumental in my development as to be positive about life.
To be a can-do, not a can't-do.
Yes, to be a Mexican and not a Mexicant.
You knew I was going to say that next. That's what I was. When you said I believe in can, I wanted to get the roots, and then I was going to deliver that line. You took it right from me. Cool. I love it. You know, we have similar backgrounds in that my father came from Oaxaca, a Zapotec Mexican Indian, very, very dark, at 15 years old, to pick fruit in Spanish Fork, Utah. And my brother and I were born here in Salt Lake City, so our history is very close to each other. Mm-hmm. Tell me about getting back to assisting people in believing they can, talking to the Zions Banks, the Wells Fargos, and others that yes, you can, and this is how. Do you have any stories that just stick out of individuals you were able to help get the seed to get started and what it ended up flourishing?
I have a wonderful example of an individual that we worked together through the programs of the SBA and who became a tremendous success. He and his wife owned some daycare centers, and they enrolled in our 8A program when President Clinton was in office, and he had a program for lending to daycare centers because it was important to have child care so that families could work. His name is Don Salazar.
You are kidding me.
Don Salazar was in my 8A program, and he was basically helping his wife. Right. His wife owned businesses. But I visited their facility at the daycare in the Ogden area, And I said, Don, who does all of your work? I see that there's a small tractor there. And he says, well, I do it. I do all the maintenance, and I do all the all the building repairs, and I do all the maintenance of the buildings. And I go, well, why don't you consider getting a general building license, contractor's license, because you're doing the work, and and there's no work coming in right now for daycare centers, but there's a lot of work in the federal arena at Hill Air Force Base, at Tooele, at Dugway Proving Ground for general contracting. He went to school. Wow. He got his contractor's license, and I gave him his first contractor's contract.
Josie, I had no idea. For the listeners that may not know, Don Salazar is one of the most successful Utahns and grew really large in the general contractor business, a builder. And I'll tell you what, he is, there's no buddy above him when it comes to a mover and a shaker in our community, in the development community. And I had no idea that you had that connection with
We
Don.
worked together so that he could prepare himself for larger and larger contracts. He became very successful. I nominated him for Utah Small Business Person of the Year.
Right.
He won the national title for America's Small Business Contractor of the Year, Small Business Person of the Year.
Yeah.
And then he got very involved with the Chamber of Commerce, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and became president of the National Chamber of Commerce, and is still very active with them.
And bring that convention here to Salt Lake City.
And he and I have maintained our friendship throughout the years, and he and his wife are wonderful supporters and friends. So that's one of my best stories. It's not my story, it's their story.
Right. Well, that's a great story. There is no doubt about it. Then you went on to go your 20 years, and then you decided to retire. And then what next?
Well, I retired, and I had always been interested in politics.
At rather a young age,
At rather a young age. I got involved in politics in Texas, but when I moved to Utah, I became a federal employee, and we have the Hatch Act, which limits the political activity that a federal employee can become involved with. But when I retired, I was unhatched, and I became to get involved in the local politics of the area. And we were involved in an organization that was trying to promote and move Latino to become involved in politics. My husband and I were involved in the local arena, and one day a friend of ours came to our home, and he was running for the legislature, and he came to ask my husband to be his financial coordinator for his campaign. And he said, you know, we want to make sure that we try to have as many Latinos in the various positions that are open, and we need someone to run for such and such an office. And I turned to my husband and I said, why don't you run? And he goes, what? I said, you're qualified, you've got a degree, you've got the experience, why don't you run? It was 4:30 on the very last day for candidate registration, and the downtown office for registration closed at 5 o'clock. Wow. We got in the car, raced down to the registration office, and made it at about 5 minutes to 5 and got him registered. And he started running, and since then, he's been serving in the Utah legislature for 20 years. I have served as his campaign manager during that time, and he has won for 10 consecutive terms for 20 years. I myself decided to run, and ran for the position of lieutenant governor. And I was the first person of color, the first Latina in the history of Utah to run for that office. Now, we were running against Levitt. No, we were running against Huntsman.
Right.
Huntsman had an 87% approval rating. We knew we weren't going to win.
Right.
But my goal was to get the message and travel throughout the state, letting the citizens of Utah know that if you're prepared And when you're prepared and when you're ready, you can accomplish anything. So I would travel around and speak to our issues and speak to our goals, and serving as an example of a woman, a Latina woman, who was ready to take the reins to lead the government of the state. And it was a very, very exciting experience. We didn't win, but we met our personal goal.
Now, who ran as governor? You were lieutenant governor. I don't remember.
Bob Springmeyer.
Oh, yes.
Bob
yes,
Springmeyer,
yes, yes.
who was involved with the river waterways and water
Was he a
in
physician?
Utah. He was he wasn't a physician.
Okay.
He was an environmentalist.
Okay,
He was
got
involved
it.
in the environmental arena.
Right,
And
okay.
so he was running for governor. I was running for lieutenant governor. And here's a funny story. We would go to Logan, and we would travel throughout the state of Utah. And very many times he couldn't go, so I would go representing the party. And I would go representing the gubernatorial ticket. So I would travel, and the announcer, the MC of the program, would say, "Ladies and gentlemen, and now representing the gubernatorial ticket for the Democratic Party is Josie Valdez." I was introduced as Josie Valdez all up and down the Wasatch Front, all over Utah. And then when I would get up to speak, people were still expecting me
To introduce.
to introduce Jose. And so it became a running joke. And for quite a long time, my colleagues would be calling me Jose.
Well, okay. I'm not going to make that mistake, Josie. Take a moment and picture in your mind igniting your child's journey to lifelong success from an early age. With Yes, Our Kids Can, this vision becomes a reality right from preschool. Don't miss this chance to shape your child's path towards extraordinary success. Enroll in the Yes, Our Kids Can University now and witness the remarkable impact it can have on your child's growth and development. Secure your child's bright future today. Then you, if I'm not mistaken, you worked about 4 years in city government of Salt Lake City. Is that not right?
I was very blessed to work for Rocky Anderson. Right after I retired, Rocky had an opening for the director of the Office of Diversity. And I thought, I loved Rocky. His creativeness, his innovativeness, his grittiness, and I thought, now that's a place where I can spend some time and dedicate myself to that concept of what was represented by him. So I interviewed, and I got the job, and I loved it. I really enjoyed it, and the reason that I enjoyed it was that Rocky, during my time, was the kind of boss that said, "Just do your job." Meet the goals, surpass the goals, just do your job. And so he left an open arena for creativeness and for addressing issues that needed to be addressed and solved. And so I really enjoyed that period of my career.
And one of the things that I've always admired about you and Mark, your husband, and our state representative, Mark Wheatley, is that while sometimes, well, not sometimes, oftentimes we may disagree, you never become disagreeable and continue to talk. And it's something in our nation that we really have got to get back to, is stop arguing and just keep having a conversation. I remember one time as name dropping will definitely be I'll be accused of, but I had the opportunity of visiting President Clinton in his office when I was serving on the Air Force Academy Board with General Scowcroft, and we presented the report of the findings of the curriculum, the facility, and the morale of the cadets in the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. And so after we present the report and go over it, President Clinton was always just engaging. And I couldn't help myself but to ask him a question. President Clinton, how does it make you feel when you get accused so often of waffling. And he walked over to me, and I remember he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, well, David, I prefer to call that listening. And if you have a conversation and two people listen, we'll both walk away waffling a bit.
My experience with waffling was I served as president of the Utah State Women's Legislative Council. The Women's State Legislative Council is a group of women that are composed of Republicans and Democrats and independents who follow legislation that impacts women, children, and families in the state of Utah. And we would invite the sponsors of certain bills to come in and give their reason why they wanted that bill to pass. But we would also invite the opposition to present why the bill shouldn't pass, and then we would discuss it among the women. We had some lively discussions and debates with the Democrats and the Republicans and independents, and then we would decide whether the group wanted to support that bill or vote against the bill. As president of that organization, it was my job to create a spirit of unity, to come out with a solution that was agreeable to both. And we always went with the majority. The majority always ruled. And we did have some very heated discussions. I remember one particularly about having time for mothers to breastfeed their children or pump their breasts, and whether or not there should be accommodations for that in the workforce. Well, there were a lot of women who thought, well, women should be in the home, women shouldn't be out there, they shouldn't have to breastfeed their kids at work or pump their breasts, they shouldn't be working anyway. And then the other one was, well, women should have equal opportunity and they should be able to work, and if they work, then accommodations should be made. And there was a very heated discussion.
And let me just add, and some even suggested that women use the restroom and a stall to feed their child. And I don't know if you know of Lindsay White, the little milk bar, but she's made this her initiative in a company that she's started to handle this question of, you wouldn't ask or want to go into a stall and eat a hamburger, would you? And that we've got to get past this, and very successful on the idea of breastfeeding children in public. Can't we just get over it?
Can't we just get over it? Well, it was a lively discussion, but the group decided to vote in favor of the bill, and then we moved it forward and worked to lobby for it, and it passed. And it passed the legislature. But you're right. We need to listen. And I think that's one of the things that I like to do. I know I like to respect everyone's opinion. I don't have to like it.
Right.
And I don't have to agree with it, but I do need to respect the opinion of the person that has that particular differing point of view.
Well, you know, in our politics today, there is some negative and there is some positive, a lot less positive than there used to be, but it doesn't mean we can't find our way back to what a democracy is. I think it was the founding fathers said that you can judge the health of our country based on how the majority party treats the minority party. Right now, we got some work to do. But I'll tell you, when this last election was completed, for me, I look at it like we have one president at a time. I believe that as an American, and it's important that we honor the office of the presidency. I happen to be delighted that that he won with a landslide, just simply so the arguing and the would be end. He has the mandate, go forward. And the one thing that we have every 4 years is an opportunity to readjust should we find it necessary. But now is not a time to all of a sudden start to fight. The President Trump has not even taken office yet. So that's my determination of what it is to be an American. And it's time for me to put my feelings apart. And this is the route America chose to take. And I'm just very proud to be an American. And my dad worked really hard to make that happen for our family, for sure.
I'm going to switch the subject a little bit, but refer to your comment about readjusting. I enrolled in college as an adult, so I was a non-traditional student at Westminster College. I credit my life success a lot to what I learned at Westminster College. But there was one particular incident talking about a readjustment. I was graduating, and I wanted a good job. I mean, that's why I went back to college. I had always been almost there for a job, but because I didn't have a degree, somebody else got it. So I went back to school as an older student and got my degree in business and economics with a minor in communications. And I wanted to work for the Small Business Administration. A friend of mine had told me about what they did and where they did it, and I thought I was a good fit. But they didn't have a job opening. But I made an appointment with a director, and I told him, "You don't have a job opening now, but when you do, I'm your man." And I explained why, and okay, but there was no job. So it was a time of affirmative action, and there was another job with the state of Utah as director of some office that had to do with affirmative action, and they were looking for a woman, and they were looking for a minority, and they offered me the job to head a particular department. But I didn't really want the job, especially because it would be credited to, well, she's a woman.
Right.
Oh, she's a minority.
Right.
I was so confused, and I didn't know what to do. So the president of the college was Pete Peterson, who was the president of Kennecott Corporation. And they had loaned him to be president of the college during the transition period of the college.
Right.
And he had an open door policy for his senior students. So I made an appointment with him, and I told him the situation. I don't know what to do. I really want this job, but there's no job. And they're offering me this job. You know, what should I do? And he says, "Josie, take a piece of paper and make a list and put the pros and the cons and draw a line in the middle, and then write down all the pros of the one job, and then write down all the pros of the cons of that job, and then do the same thing with the other one. All the pros of the good job that you've been offered, and all the cons. And then take those two pieces of paper, throw them away, and do what your heart wants you to do."
Love it.
And that's what I did, and I went with a Small Business Administration, and I've never regretted it.
So you just waited until there was an opening.
Yep.
Good. Patience is a virtue.
Patience and redirecting your life, or directing your life to where your heart really wants to go.
Well, Josie, I've always found you as a breath of fresh air, most positive person that I know. I think that you and Mark just are a great example of a power couple serving our state, our community, in everything that you do. So in closing, I want to give you a copy of my new book, Live Ready, Beyond Think and Grow Rich. And thank you so much for being on our program today.
Thank you, David. I'm always ready to learn more, never too old to move forward and keep on going.
And that's affirmative. Thank you.